Good morning, you're listening to the brief wake up, your mindful start to the day. I'm Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. For health this morning, let's talk about alcohol and something most people still don't fully realize about it. Alcohol isn't just hard on your liver. It's a known carcinogen. That's not opinion, that's classification. Alcohol increases the risk of at least 7 different cancers, including cancers of the mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, colon, rectum, and breast. And here's the part that surprises people. There is no completely safe level of alcohol when it comes to cancer risk. Even light or moderate drinking slightly increases risk, especially for breast cancer. So what's actually happening in the body? When you drink alcohol, your body breaks it down into a chemical called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde damages DNA and interferes with the body's ability to repair that damage. That's a core mechanism of cancer formation. Alcohol also increases estrogen levels, which helps explain the breast cancer link, and it makes tissues more permeable, allowing other carcinogens, like those from tobacco, to penetrate cells more easily. This is why alcohol and smoking together are especially dangerous. Now, this doesn't mean one drink causes cancer. Risk is dose dependent, meaning the more you drink, the higher the risk. Heavy drinking carries the highest risk. Daily drinking increases risk more than occasional drinking. Binge drinking adds its own layer of harm. But even small amounts matter over time. That's why public health guidance has quietly shifted. The old idea that alcohol, especially wine, is heart healthy has largely been walked back. Any cardiovascular benefit appears small and limited, and it does not offset cancer risk for most people. So what's the practical takeaway? You don't have to be perfect. But fewer drinks is better than more. Less frequent is better than daily. And if you don't drink, there's no health reason to start. Alcohol is common, it's social, it's normalized, but biologically, it's not neutral. And understanding that helps you make clearer, more informed choices without fear, guilt, or hype. The news is next. In the news, let's start with Washington, where both Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify before the House Oversight Committee as part of its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The move comes after weeks of escalating pressure, including the threat of contempt of Congress proceedings. Under the agreement, the Clintons will appear for closed-door depositions, though exact dates and the scope of questioning have not yet been finalized. Republican lawmakers say the testimony is necessary to understand what high-level political figures knew about Epstein and his network. Democrats and Clinton allies argue the inquiry is politically motivated. But for now, the agreement pauses what was shaping up to be a major confrontation on Capitol Hill. In Texas, a political upset is drawing national attention. Democrat Taylor Remmett has flipped a state Senate seat in a district that Donald Trump carried by 17 points just 2 years ago. The special election victory, in a traditionally Republican area near Fort Worth, is being closely watched as a potential signal heading into the 2026 midterms. Political analysts say the win highlights shifting voter dynamics in suburban Texas, while Republican leaders are already calling it a wake-up call as they look to shore up support ahead of November. And this morning, a deeply concerning missing person case continues to unfold in Arizona. Authorities are intensifying the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. Investigators say her Tucson area home is now being treated as a possible crime scene, and foul play has not been ruled out. Nancy Guthrie was reported missing over the weekend. Officials say she requires daily medication and has limited mobility, increasing concern as the hours pass. Law enforcement has deployed drones, K-9 units, and detectives as the search expands, and the family is urging anyone with information to come forward. Savannah Guthrie has stepped away from broadcasting duties to be with her family as the investigation continues. Those are the stories shaping the morning. You're up to speed and ready to start the day. The Big Sip is next. As we continue our Living with Absence Grief series. Today we answer the question, who are you now after the loss of someone? You see, loss doesn't just take someone from your life. It takes a version of you that was a spouse, a child, a caregiver, and more. When that role disappears, people often say something that sounds simple, but is actually very deep. I don't know who I am anymore. That's not just emotion, that's identity disruption. Your sense of self is not something you carry alone. It's partly built in relationship. Who you were with them, who you were because of them. The version of yourself that only existed in that bond. When that person dies, it's not just the relationship that ends. The role ends, and the brain has to answer a question it didn't expect to face. Who am I without this role? That's why grief can feel disorienting long after the initial shock fades. You might be functioning, you might be working, you might even feel okay some days. And yet, underneath it, there's a persistent sense of being unmoored. That's not because you're stuck. It's because your identity map hasn't fully updated yet. Psychologically, part of grieving is something called narrative repair. Your brain is trying to rewrite your life story to include three truths at the same time. There was a before, there is an after, and I am not the same person. That rewriting takes time, not because you're indecisive, not because you're resisting change, but because identity is built slowly, through repetition, roles, and meaning. When someone dies or is gone, the story you were living no longer fits reality, and until a new one begins to take shape, the space in between can feel empty, or frightening, or unreal. People often interpret that feeling as weakness, but it's not. It's reconstruction. Grief doesn't just hurt, it reshapes. Over time, many people notice something subtle. They're not trying to go back to who they were, and they're not sure yet who they're becoming. They're in between, and that in-between state is not failure, it's transition. You don't lose your identity forever, but you don't get the old one back either. You build something new, with the loss included, not erased, not minimized, but integrated. Grief doesn't just ask, how do I live without them? It asks, who am I now in a world where this loss is part of my story? That question doesn't have a quick answer, but asking it is part of healing. Because grief doesn't just take something away. It changes the shape of who you are and who you're becoming. The lighter roast is next. For the lighter roast, let's discuss the strange comfort of routine coffee. Why the ritual matters more than the caffeine. There's something quietly comforting about making the same cup of coffee the same way every morning. Same mug, same spot on the counter, same first sip. And if you really pay attention, it's not the caffeine doing most of the work. It's the ritual. From a brain perspective, routines are stabilizers. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for uncertainty. What's coming next? What needs attention? What could go wrong? Ritual interrupts that scanning. When you repeat the same small sequence every day, your brain doesn't have to predict. It already knows. Water on, grind, pour, wait, sip. That predictability lowers cognitive load before the day even begins, and that's why the ritual matters more than the caffeine. Caffeine stimulates, but ritual regulates. That first cup of coffee is often the only moment in the day that belongs entirely to you. Before emails, before obligations, before the world asks anything. It's a signal to your brain. We're here. We're starting. You're safe enough to settle in. That's also why the mug matters, why the chair matters, why changing the routine can feel strangely off. It's not superstition, it's embodied memory. Your brain associates that sequence with grounding, orientation, and readiness. It's a soft anchor. This is especially true during periods of stress or loss. When big parts of life feel unpredictable, small, predictable rituals take on outsized importance. They don't fix anything. They don't solve grief. They don't erase stress. But they create a brief island of familiarity in an uncertain day. And that matters. So if your coffee doesn't wake you up the way it used to, or if you could skip the caffeine entirely and still want the ritual, that's not habit for habit's sake. That's your nervous system doing something very human, finding steadiness in repetition. Because sometimes, what we need most in the morning isn't stimulation, it's orientation. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a routine can do is quietly remind you, you're still here, and the day has a beginning. Our commemoration is next. February 3rd holds a few quiet contrasts. On this day in 1959, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper were killed in a plane crash, a moment later remembered as the day the music died. It's often marked not just as a tragedy, but as a reminder of how suddenly absence can enter a story and permanently change its shape. At the same time, today is also Feed the Birds Day, a small, quiet observance that encourages people to care for something fragile in the middle of winter. It's an understated reminder that even when the world feels cold or uncertain, tending to small acts of care still matters. February 3rd is also Setsubun in Japan, a traditional day marking the transition into spring. Families throw beans to symbolically drive out misfortune and invite renewal, acknowledging that seasons change whether we're ready or not. And yes, it's also National Carrot Cake Day, a lighter note in the mix, a reminder that even on days tied to loss, ritual, comfort, and sweetness still have a place. Together, these moments say something quietly true about how humans move through time. We remember what was lost. We care for what's still here. We mark the turning of seasons, and we find small comforts along the way. That's February 3rd. Today we looked at how alcohol quietly shapes long-term cancer risk, how power and accountability are colliding in Washington and Texas, and how grief doesn't just take someone away, it reshapes who we are. We talked about the strange comfort of small rituals, like a morning cup of coffee, and why predictable moments matter when the world feels uncertain. On a day that remembers loss, care, renewal, and even a little sweetness, February 3rd reminds us that moving forward has never meant forgetting. It means carrying what mattered and choosing how we live next. This is Dr. Robinson for the Brief Wake Up. Be kind, calm, and curious. We will catch you next time.